I'm continuing my flat pedal challenge video, and I've been riding the flat pedals for about a month and a half, 2 months now, mainly on my local cross-country trails. And I tell you what, I'm getting used to the flat pedals. I'm going to talk more about kind of where I feel better with the flat pedals, but today I'm actually in Dade City. I'm going to ride Croom, and there's a section called Drunken Monkey, so it's not real technical as in rough, but it's a lot of ups and downs, some berms and things like that. I haven't really got a chance to do much technical stuff yet with the flat pedals. And then tomorrow I'm going to go ride Santos, and that's pretty chunky. There's some drops, and there's some pretty technical type rocks that you got to go over, so I'm going to test the flat pedals there. And I'll talk about kind of how I feel, but like I said, I can say that I'm really starting to get used to these. I even commuted home. My commute's about 35 minutes, and I use flat pedals on just dirt roads and roads, and honestly, it was no big deal at all. Where I feel like they're a little bit of a disadvantage for me personally, just because I'm so used to riding clipless pedals, is when I sprint, kind of getting out of the saddle. Something that I've noticed with the flat pedals that I didn't really expect on the Giant Trance, which has a little bit lower bottom bracket, is the fact that I have more pedal strikes when cornering, just because they stick out more than the clipless pedals. So that's a slight disadvantage that I found. It's really not that big of a deal, but I do have more pedal strikes with the flat pedals. I'll also say that I'm getting real used to these 510 shoes. They're so comfortable. I especially like getting done with a ride and just kind of walking around in the shoes and not having to put on, sandals or whatever. So time to go hit the trails, and then I'll report back after I ride some technical trails what I think about the flat pedals. Again, I've been on clipless pedals for over 20 years, so this is the first time I've really gotten back on flat pedals, so it's only been a couple months, so we'll see how it goes on this technical stuff. Okay, so my son and I had a great time at the Croom trails riding Drunken Monkey, and now we're at Santos. So I'm going to head out on these trails that are a little bit more rocky. And let me just say, first of all, one of the reasons I wanted to show my son in that video is because he races BMX, and since he's just starting out, they have to ride flat pedals. So he's actually gone back to flat pedals for mountain biking. He started riding clipless pedals when he was like 5 years old, seriously. And so he's really used to clipless, but now that he's riding flat pedals for BMX, he actually prefers mountain biking in flat pedals, and he said he's going to stick with the flat pedals once he starts riding clip for racing BMX. I'll conclude all of these videos when I'm done, but what I'm learning is there really is no right or wrong answer as far as which pedal you use. Now, there are situations where I think clipless have an advantage. I will say, riding yesterday, there are two areas where it would take me a lot of getting used to if I were to switch to riding flat pedals. One is jumping. I I would have to totally relearn jumping. Now, when I was a kid and I raced BMX, I jumped all day long, literally, during the summer in flat pedals. I would clear doubles and step-ups in BMX races with flat pedals. Yesterday, I was like terrified every time my tires left the ground with flat pedals. I felt like I was on a roller coaster. You're kind of coming out of the seat. I felt like that with a flat pedal. So I would have to relearn jumping with flat pedals. The other situation was actually climbing steep hills. And so in Florida, we have some short, really steep hills that I get out of the saddle and crank. And those are the areas where I guess I pull up with the clipless pedals. So those were the two main areas. Just riding along when it's fairly, you're not climbing up steep hills and not jumping, I could go either way, honestly. But it's those situations when you're sprinting out of the saddle and climbing those steep hills that I really prefer the clipless pedal. So now I'm going to head out on Santos and let's get some miles in. And by the way, I am wearing baggies. I never wear spandex. And by the way, I'm testing these Endura shorts, and these are awesome. So I'm doing a whole separate review on this clothing. I got a few pieces of clothing from these guys. So anyway, heading out, gonna get some miles in.
All right, actually just follow this line.
All right, I just got back home and I had a pretty good weekend of riding on the flat pedals. And I'm ready to go ahead and give my conclusions of 2 months of testing. It's time to send these back to the subscriber who loaned them to me, so that was really gracious. I appreciate it a lot. So this was a fun test. It gave me a new perspective and it also gave me a new appreciation. And I'll mention that in a few minutes. The first thing that I'll say is the more that I rode these pedals, the more comfortable I felt. I did not have my feet sliding around like I did with the tennis shoes and the pedals that only had 2 pins. These race face effects have some really good pins. The 510 shoes work great. The big thing was I just felt like I had to think about where my foot was on the pedal. It was still not second nature to me like I know it would be if I just kept riding the pedals month after month. It would be second nature of where to place the foot. With clipless pedals, it's still just kind of brainless of your position on the pedal. And that's a big advantage to me. You clip in, your foot's exactly where you want it to be. It doesn't move. Whereas these, I constantly found myself trying to put my foot in the right position. Like I said, I really think that's going to become more second nature if I were to stay on the flat pedals. Another advantage for me personally with clipless pedals as opposed to flat is I feel just more connected to the bike. There are really only 2 main contact points that you have with the bike, and 3 if you count the saddle, but a lot of times you're out of the saddle, especially when you're going down technical stuff. Your hands and your feet. And it's just because of years and years and years of riding with clipless pedals that I have adapted my riding style to control the bike with my feet in a different way. Now, I did feel like I was controlling the bike a little bit better with the flat pedals after a couple months. And I even did some drops, some small drops, and I started to feel more comfortable. I even started to feel more comfortable jumping today than I did yesterday on the flat pedals. I just kind of thought about it more, of keeping my feet connected to the bike, whereas with clipless pedals you can kind of spring up and pick up the bike with you. It's just a different style, and this is where I gain respect. Those of you who do massive jumps with flat pedals, huge respect. You know, guys doing tail whips today, it's insane what people do today on jumping bikes than they did back when I used to race BMX as a kid. So huge respect to all of you out there who ride flat pedals and jump big jumps. It takes, I believe, more skill to do that than with clipless. Something else that I've become adapted to with clipless pedals is how I get my foot off. So with clipless pedals, I just kind of move my foot sideways. It's not a perfectly sideways heel click or anything like that. It's just moving the foot sideways really quickly, and I got to where I can do that. Like if I'm on a technical section and I don't make it and a bike starts to go sideways, 99 times out of 100 I can move my foot sideways and get it off the pedal. With the flat pedals, I found that I had to pick my foot up a little bit and get it off the pedals. It's a different way of removing the foot, and I actually had to get used to that. Again, after 2 months, it was no big deal. You know, it just becomes natural. But that was just something else I didn't really expect to adjust to with the flat pedals. Now, like I said a few minutes ago, one of the hardest things for me with the flat pedals was steep climbs where I was used to dragging the back pedal up with the back foot. There was a section today that I always make on a bike with clipless pedals. Today with the flat pedals, I tried over and over. Finally, I got it. Here's some video of that.
It keeps making the turn and stops it right now. Is it? Yeah. Don't think you put the line to land for... This climb is harder than this. I'm having a hard time making this climb with flat pedals. I make it all day long with clipless. God, just have no control over the bike. God, frustrating. Dude. Dude, this is freaking crazy. That has never been a problem until these flat pedals. I'm getting worse. Yeah, finally, victory.
So with those loose, steep climbs, it was a matter of using the back foot to power, but also just the control. I just have to get used to the flat pedals and controlling the bike, even when you're on those climbs where the front end is light because it's steep and it's just kind of wandering around. Again, I just feel like I control the bike better with the clipless pedals. The areas that I feel like clipless pedals have the best advantage is cross-country racing and cyclocross racing. And if you race BMX, like when I went to the Nationals a few weeks ago, everybody except for the novice riders, which is you can't ride BMX and clipless pedals as a novice, they don't allow it, but everybody had clipless pedals. Now there's a reason for that. I think it's the power, I think it's the control. That being said, if you're starting out, I think your skills are going to develop better with flat pedals. You've got to learn to maneuver the bike a little bit better. You've got to learn to use your hands a little bit better. So that leads to the question of what am I going to continue to do as far as my pedals on my trail bike. Most of the time I'm going to ride these, and here's why. I use Clipless for cyclocross racing. I use Clipless for cross-country mountain bike racing, for cross-country riding, and for gravel riding. To have to adapt to a different style, way of connecting with the bike, I just feel like I have a better advantage of sticking with clipless pedals. I don't have to think about how am I getting my foot off. I don't have to think about controlling the bike in a little different way. And also, I would have to have some patience, because when I have limited time. When I have time to get out and ride, I want to ride. I want to motor. I want to have the most fun I can. And with the flat pedals, I found myself more learning kind of a newer skill than having fun. But that's not a bad thing. And I'm still going to use these from time to time, but most of the time I'm going to use the clipless pedals. So in conclusion, there really is no right or wrong. People who ride clipless pedals, I think, should try flat pedals if they haven't in a while, because I think it can really develop your skills as a rider. If you have only ridden flat pedals, I think you owe it to yourself to try some of these, but use the Shimano multi-release cleats if you're skittish about falling over and not being able to get your foot out, because you will probably not have that problem with those multi-release cleats. And I have a video on that. I'll post it below, but those are really helpful. So again, no right or wrong. Let's all get along. They're both good. It's riding, it's fun, it's skill development. Whichever one you choose, or if you choose both, just go with it and have fun. So thanks for hanging with me with this flat pedal challenge. I'll link some of the other videos that I did below. Questions, comments, do you agree, do you disagree with what I said? Do you want to add to it? Go ahead and drop those below. Thanks for watching.